Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I am your host, Rex Bear. We have the legend, Diamond from Oppenheimer Ranch with us. Now, a very interesting story that just got brought to my attention is a science paper. And I want to share this science paper with you real quick because it is incredible and it could possibly connect us to a extinction level event, a near extinction level event that happened about 14,000 years ago, approximately. But here we go. I'm going to share this with you real quick. And now I just have to, here we go. We just look at it, ladies and gentlemen. This is a large impact crater beneath a glacier in northwest Greenland. And it describes how it's over 19 miles wide. It's underneath over a half mile's worth of ice, up to a kilometer. So this thing is huge. And the timeline on it is up for debate. So Diamond actually showed me this article earlier. I said, we've got to talk about this. This is fascinating. And want to let you know real quick, ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is brought to you in part by virtualshield.com/leak project. There are specials right now. I mean, will you just look at it? For $2.99 a month, you can keep your information to yourself. The fastest, most secure VPN on the planet, Virtual Shield, for $2.99 a month. That's over 70% off for the Black Friday special. Get the exclusive deal, virtualshield.com/leak project. Okay, you have the right to keep your information to yourself or get assimilated by the Borg and then start having Sims created about you. And then they're going to start anyway. No, I'm thinking of the X-Files episode. My apologies. Diamond, dude, we're living in amazing times. I have been reading this Velikovsky book that you gave me, and I love it. And I've been reading through the connections of Venus and Ishtar and Nana, Lilith, Lucifer. Venus is actually Lucifer. And then I find out how about 3,500 years ago, Venus swings by Earth and it almost causes an extinction on the planet. Human beings almost gone bye-bye completely. Then it comes back again 52 years later. And that started all these religious beliefs. And then the Mayans started sacrificing their prisoners. They would rip their hearts out and then offer them to the gods, to Ishtar, to Lucifer when it didn't come back. And then just bizarre kind of stuff. It's like, wow, why would people start ripping out other people's hearts if a planet didn't come back? But the more research I do into the electric universe, the more research I do into gods that are talked about being actually planets and then depicted as beings, it really is starting to come together. I mean, I read this ancient Sumerian tablet today called Anana and On, and it was translated by Oxford University. I read it a couple years ago, and now I have a completely different interpretation of this. But I want to get into this cycle that we're in, these grand solar minimum cycles, the weakening magnetosphere, and these other cycles you talked about, some that happened about 12,000, 14,000 years ago. Can you share with the audience what you shared with me before we hit the start button? And thanks a lot for coming on the program. I know you're extremely busy. So how the heck are you, man? Ladies and gentlemen.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere else except doing a podcast with you, Rex, especially because we're delivering the truth to the people. And more importantly, how about the universe bringing you and I together so that all this information that we've been working on for, years, what I have to say and what you have to say, it's coalescing into a narrative that makes all of the ancient mythology seem completely different. We were just talking, the way we were thinking about things 5-10 years ago have completely changed because of cutting edge science and speaking to other like-minded people. And this thought process is a collective, and that I really cherish that. Do you want to touch on that real quick?
Well, not only that, but it's interesting how we've shared some interesting experiences that we had when we were younger that I can't even, like when you said that you saw something similar to I did when I was just a toddler. I mean, just a baby, an infant, and you were a few years older. But that to me was like, he's either pulling my leg or, he just, oh yeah, I did too. Or else and I really think you're being genuine with me. And if that's the case, folks, think about that, these similarities, these connections. Then I was looking at these petroglyphs that happened around the same time of these, catastrophes, volcanic events, etc. And they look very similar to what I saw. So I don't know. Maybe it's just, once again, maybe it was a dream. Maybe it was an archetype in my mind. Maybe it was highly concentrated swamp gas, but it was there and it was amazing. And it still has an impact to this day. So, but yeah, let's talk about Greenland. Let's get into this incredible article, this research essay. I've got a link in the video description box for it. And you think it could be connected to this event that almost wiped out humanity?
Well, let me go out on a limb here, Rex, and say something that I haven't said yet to the.
I gotta do this just to freak people out, folks. I'm not doing the 666 symbol. No, this is just, Diamond's animated. They'll see me doing like, okay, we just had to get that out of the way. So at the very beginning, I don't want to read 50 comments. Like, I was getting emails, Diamond, like, oh, you've got Diamond on, and he just kept busting out the Illuminati sign. He lives in a barn, okay? I've seen his house. He's off the grid. He's Illuminati. I mean, unless he's like most, I'm thinking of Illuminati, they live in these lavish lifestyles, with these bankster type people that have multi-million-dollar Picassos on the wall. You've got Diamond hanging out in a barn. I mean, he lived in a
trailer over there, Rex.
There's his trailer. Wow. All right, let's go back to reality now. I just noticed we lost like 300 people when I said that. We went from 600 people to 300. Joking. All right, we're just getting started. So let's go. Rock and roll. And thanks again. I'm going to go ahead and hit the mute button. Talk to us.
All right, so let's just get started. So what happened yesterday was this paper got released. I don't know if it's still screen shared or not. The paper is called A Large Impact Crater Beneath Hiawatha Glacier in Northwest Greenland. And now it's significant for a number of reasons. So let's just talk about the basics about this find. This is one of the largest craters ever found, Rex, of this magnitude and in recent history. And what I mean by that is that it's the largest impact structure that we know of on Earth for the last 25 million years. The next one that's this size happened 25 million years ago. So this baby, when we start looking at it, is as big as the one from 25 million years ago. But when they looked at it, it shows in the ice, if you start to look at the ice profile, it shows perfect glacial ice down to about 12,900 years ago. And then all the ice below that is jumbled with big rocks and is indiscriminate, meaning there's no glacial flow. So just based on the preliminary findings of the cross-section, that means that this impact crater can be exactly dated to 12,900 years ago, the beginning of the Holocene. And why is that significant? The beginning of the Holocene is when sea level rose 400 feet. And it did it in less than 1,600 years. And that's based on proxy data. It could have been quicker. So what's happening at this time is sea level is coming up and up. It's coming up 400 feet, Rex, which is inundating the globe. And there is no explanation for the speed of this rise. Now, here's what happens. Shortly after sea level comes up 400 feet, there is an event that everyone knows of that's called the Younger Dryas event. Now, this event, after sea level is coming up hundreds of feet, all of a sudden there's an event where temperature on the globe drops 10 to 12 degrees C. Now, here's the scenario. Let's walk it through. We're coming out of an ice age 14,000 years ago, and it's getting warm and sea level's rising. And the mammoths and all the megafauna are moving up towards the Arctic. It's tropical. All right. And then one day, the fateful day, the day that this crater was made, the North Taurid meteor showers is a swarm. It's a storm. It's called a meteor storm. And we've entered the North Taurid meteor storm, which is which is Comet Enki's storm. And we've entered it. And the only problem with the section we entered is there's 1,100 objects the size of New Jersey that are going to hit Earth. And they do. They all come in at a very high incident at 24,000 miles an hour. Can you imagine that? 1,100 objects entering the atmosphere at 24,000 miles an hour. They're coming at a high incident, which is most objects come at a shallow angle. The North Taurids are like straight in. So there's very little time for it to burn up. So there's a very high probability that these objects are going to hit, because they don't go at a shallow angle and burn up for a long period of time. They're coming. The North Taurids are some of the fastest objects out there. You know, I'm talking fast, between 16,000 versus 24,000 miles an hour for an asteroid. The North Taurids are the fastest. Those are the debris field from Comet Enki, which is, there's hundreds of papers that purport that that was a gigantic comet 20,000 years ago that broke up and did something. It broke up and it hit Earth. And it hit Earth. And why I'm saying this is because that, here's more corroborating evidence, Rex. That crater they found at the exact latitude in Greenland, if you go over to Siberia, is where the Tunguska event happened, where the event in 2008, the plasma discharge asteroid, happened up in Siberia. So, and these are all associated with the North Taurids, which goes back to Comet Enki, which is estimated to have blown up about 20,000 years ago. But what we now know, it was 12,900 years ago, and it was the onset of the younger Dryas event. Now, do you want to chime in before I explain what that is and what happened?
No, keep going. This is great. I'm just absorbing the data. You're on a roll.
Okay. So we're coming out of the last ice age, around 14,000 years ago. Sea levels rising, the climate is getting warm, and all of these objects enter the atmosphere 12,900 years ago. Most of them don't hit the surface. Thousands of them discharge electrically above the east coast of North America, forming these lenticular lenses called the Carolina Bays. There's 15,000 plus that have been located of these crater-like formations that aren't craters, and they're unexplainable. But if it is plasma scarring from objects exploding, boom, 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 above the surface, it makes sense that they're all in the same direction, and they're all pointing towards the Laurentide ice sheet, Rex. They're all pointing up towards that ice sheet. So they're all headed up there. Some don't blow up and they hit the ice sheet. Some discharge above the ice sheet, which is like a plasma lightning bolt, a mile wide, connecting with the Earth through a 5 kilometer wide ice sheet. It's going to melt it. It's going to melt it like you have never seen ice melt before. Could you imagine putting lightning through an ice sheet from the Earth to the ionosphere? Lightning bolt. That's 1,000,000 degrees. It's plasma. It instantly melts the ice sheet. If you instantly melt sections of a giant ice sheet, you are going to have this hot water breakout at the base, causing all the catastrophic floods that Randall Carlson and everyone have been uncovering over the last decade. And there are huge outwash plains in Oregon and Washington state, which are proven to be from massive, explosive glacial outwashes from an unknown source. Well, we just found it. It's this impact scenario. So we're coming out of the last ice age, Rex. Sea levels all rising up nice and high. It's getting warm. And then these objects come in. And as they're coming in, it's a nuclear winter. They catastrophically melt all the remaining glacial ice. There's a colossal global flood. And the entire boreal forests in the northern hemisphere are known to have burned. It's a phenomenon called the black mats that have now been correlated worldwide through Siberia and North America, all around the northern hemisphere, exactly at the same time. It was an instantaneous event. All of the forests in the northern hemisphere burned on this day, while all of the glaciers melted. And also in 3 hours, after it began, the temperature on Earth dropped 50 degrees because it was an instant nuclear winter, the likes of which you could not replicate. A nuclear winter that made the sky dark for years, killing all plant life and eliminating 68% of megafauna on the planet. It was the largest mass extinction in history, and we now see a small piece of it in this crater, in the Carolina Bays, in the catastrophic floods in Oregon. It's all connected to the same exact moment in history, which we call the Younger Dryas event, and we're proving it every day. And this happens on a cyclicity of the great year. So it's not a freak thing. It's weird how it's cyclic, because it sounds like we're talking about a freak event, doesn't it? But it is in fact a cyclic cosmic catastrophe. And I don't know how it unfolds, except now what we know is how it unfolded this last time. The Holocene warming and the Younger Dryas, we now know was catastrophic flooding, cosmogenic in origin. Here's one of the craters in this one spot in Greenland. The chunk that hit had to be at least a half a mile wide. If that hit the ocean, oh my God, thank God it hit the edge of the land there. Woo! That would have been a 6 mile high tsunami from your mommy. Who knows?
Well, let me jump in real quick, because I am thinking of the event, for example, the Adam and Eve essay that talks about multiple cataclysms that take place, a total of 10 over the course of 70,000 years, some worse than others. But it's interesting because of the timeline. I'm opening up to this page right now, and it says the event 11,500 years ago. So, that could be talking about the next one here. And when it describes the location, and then it gets into the different places the pole shift, different places the South Pole has been, different places the South Pole has been, like 39,000 years ago, say it was in Wisconsin, and it's moved in different areas. So there's a lot that's happened over the course of 70,000 years. And I know you've got a copy that's going to get in the mail soon, so we'll compare notes and talk about stuff, because this is it was classified for a lot of years, and you could actually get the PDF on the CIA's website, but it's a sanitized version. So there's a couple pages that are missing. And you asked me, why was it classified? I don't know. I mean, that's a great question. I certainly don't know. Maybe they thought it'd freak people out if they read it, because it talks about 1,000-mile-an-hour winds. It talks about tsunamis that go across entire continents that have 10,000 feet at the beginning. Imagine a 10,000-foot tsunami at the coast, and then 1,000-mile-per-hour winds, talking about carcasses of ripped flesh and such. So there's a lot of stuff there. But what I was going to ask you real quick is, what do you think caused this event approximately 14,000, 12,000, whatever years ago? What was it? I'm not saying it was a comet. I'm saying, what brought these comets in? That's a better way what brought these comets in? Do you think it was a planet?
So here is why it's confusing. There's multiple events happening at that time. 2 major events, Rex. There's the Milankovitch cycles that are supposedly, and I believe wholeheartedly, because I've been studying this since the 80s, the Milankovitch orbital perturbations of our planet, they are the driver of the ice age. So the Earth wobbles. That's the precession of the equinoxes. The northern rotational pole rotates like a top every 26,500 years. This is what the ancients noticed. And this is what they have told us, and that's where we get astrology from. So this precession of the equinoxes is what drives the ice ages. On top of that, there is an elliptical eccentricity that happens due to these mechanics around the sun itself. And there is an ellipticity. For 100,000 years, we're very elliptical. And for half of that, we're very circular. And it's the time when we get very elliptical that we can get really far from the sun. And we're in one of those high elliptical times. It's the 100,000 year cycle that is the high eccentricity. And this is all happening with a 26,000 year wobble, which also points us for 11,000 years away from the sun and for 11,000 years toward the sun. And now we're away from the sun, and we're also extremely elliptical. So the section we're going into is the maximum Milankovitch effect. And it happens to also fall on a sea level fall surface. Halfway through the great year, there's a sea level rise during the glacial cycle that was 12,900 years ago. Halfway through is right now, Rex, and that's when the sea level drops 400 feet back down, and it stays in glacial cycle for another 12,000 years. So we have a half a cycle of warm and a half a cycle of cold every great year, and we are on the end of the interglacial. And what happens on these end of the interglacials is the magnetic reversal of the planet. It's not the rotational pole. It's the magnetic field that flips. And this in itself is catastrophic because it allows us to be bombarded by radioactive particles from space, and it may also suck objects in towards us. So it may be on these times of high cosmic ray flux that objects like the North Taurid debris field are more likely to come into play with our planet, and we suck objects in. It's just a hypothesis. It's not based on anything except there is a cosmogenic force that causes catastrophe that's not just glacial. And we now can see it in this crater here in Greenland, in the Carolina Bays, in the catastrophic floods that ended the last ice age. So the ice age was ending nicely and sea level was rising as normal. And then the Adam and Eve story began. A catastrophe happened during that flexure where all these objects hit the earth or blew up above the surface, and temperature immediately dropped that day 50 degrees C, and mammoths froze with buttercups in their mouths. And then after a few years, after the nuclear winter ended and all major life on the surface died, 70%, some people lived. They ate off the rotting carcasses for years. They ate rotten bark. Who knows? We survived, and other animals survived. That's why we're here. And then it recovered back to the warm it was originally recovering to. So there is a warming period and a flexure and a catastrophe. Boom! And then it gets quiet again. And we're headed into one of those catastrophe points. It might not always mean there's an impact, but it means there is often an impact. And the reason I'm saying this, the 11,500 year event talked about in Adam and Eve when he talks about the 1,000-mile-an-hour winds. The only way you can get that is from an impact. So the impact is hitting, I told you how fast, Rex, 24,000 miles an hour into the ocean. This object, even if it hits in 3 miles of ocean, penetrates the ocean to the bottom and hits the earth. It separates the water. It's all in the air the whole time. It's amazing. It splits the ocean and goes to the crust and goes boom and hits the crust. That's how much power it has. Do you know what kind of wind happens when that ocean claps back closed? Push! It blows like 1,000-mile-an-hour wind away from that event. It is an impact definitely that causes that type of catastrophic wind. If you're underground for 8 hours, you're cool. If you're above ground, you liquefy. And so I think these events are very common, which is why we have dolmens and all the confusing underground cities. Can you imagine if you saw everyone get liquefied from 1,000-mile-an-hour wind? Can you imagine what would happen if you got hit with an object moving that fast? It's a wrap. It's like a water balloon.
I'm thinking of that film Night of the Comet that I watched when I was just a little kid. It came out in 84, and just a few people survived, and those that survived were in some type of still building inside of a movie theater. Then they went out, and there were some zombies and stuff. But yeah, Night of the Comet, and as we talked about before, when you look at these remains of these ancient civilizations, but then a lot of these bodies, like, well, what happened to all of them? Where did they go? Were they picked up by ETs? I mean, they just disappeared in many cases. Well, what if they were just evaporated? Like you said, they just get fried by some type of plasma, and all of a sudden, it's gone. I was supposed to disappear at that moment, but I didn't. My special effects are wearing off at the moment, but I've got good sound effects. All right. So anyway, very fascinating. And I was going to show you something that makes me think that we live in the Matrix. So you know how there's been all these events on Paradise, wildfires, terrible, terrible wildfires. And I turned on my TV the other day and I turned on Netflix and I'm like, oh, okay, let's see what's going to be on Netflix. And where did it go? Yeah, here it is. Okay. So what was on Netflix? Well, hold on a second. No. I gotta clean the. This is
Armageddon 2030.
No. Look at this. Look at this. Can you read that? Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost 2 Revelations. Paradise Lost 2 Revelations. Came out in 2001. And I had the opportunity to rent it. So very bizarre that would be recommended. Like sometimes stuff will pop up in my like on the computer that'll be like, wait, I was just talking about that with Kristen. How did you ads will pop up, like just bizarre stuff. It's like, yes, the marketing companies know just as much about us as Big Brother, and they love us so much. Like, what can we sell them now? What can we pitch them now? Well, now you've got movies and TV shows coming out that are like, you're in the machine, the electric universe. So talking about the electric universe, we're in the electric universe. It's like a big simulation. Our DNA breaks down into quad code, dual binary code. So you can charge your DNA. You can run computer programs out of it. And I'm digressing. How you doing? How's it going? I got Tron.
Are we going to talk about? Oh my God,
Tron.
Are we going to talk about Duardu?
What's that?
You want to talk about Duardu Cardona and the Sumerian tablets?
Yeah. Which part?
Well, I just found out that Duardu died, and he died in July 2016, unfortunately. Now, his books are very rare, but they're some of the most scintillating and titillating, as well as inspiring electric universe narratives ever written. They're very expensive, and they have titles like God Star, Flare Star, and they're huge manuscripts, man. They're thick. They're biblical with sketches, and they're amazing. Now, this guy, he inspired many of the people that are now editor of Aeon, AEON, founding father of the Canadian Society for Interdisciplinary Studies. Do you know Aeon, that zine? He was the editor of Chronos. And Cardona published over 100 articles, notably the Saturn theory. So that's all about the Saturn myth, which we're about to talk about, which is the polar configuration. Now, the polar configuration is talked about by Dave Talbot and others. And it's not new. It's been around forever. And in fact, Rex, you and I have been talking about the fact that not only has it been around forever, but you and I meeting has allowed us to congeal an almost concise idea and theory about ancient history, about when Genesis occurred, when the first light was, and who all the gods ever were. And they certainly weren't people, were they?
No, but here's what I think. I think that these gods, these planets, there's a very good chance that they could manifest into a being per se. And I also wonder if some of these ancient hieroglyphics that have been discovered in Egypt, etc., could be much older than we're told, that depict these beings with incredible features. What if the gods actually were a form of the sun? What if they came from the sun or these different planets? Each star might be a soul, might be a spirit. You've heard that saying before. Each person is their own star, has their own path. Well, what if these planets can actually manifest into archetypes? Or what if humans that had a lot of power just use that as an excuse? I think both. I feel that both are the case. I think somebody with great power could say, I am Marduk. I am the power. I am the one that took out Tiamat, the power of the gods, of the planets. But I also, they could just be pulling people's legs. Like a lot of these tablets we read that describe these gods and these deities and these archetypes could be written for certain agendas. Kind of like today, you've got certain mainstream outlets have specific agendas and certain priorities and certain agendas that they want to narrate. They want to control the narrative. So did the ancestors, so did our ancestors and those that had a lot of power in the past. But I truly believe that the beings at the beginning, like our ancestors, who knows how far back they go, were manifest and we're like gods, had just incredible abilities to do things that we would look at as superhuman or something that you would see as a Marvel Comics hero, like Thanos or these superheroes like Hulk and stuff, just the abilities to do amazing things. What are your thoughts on that?
I like your interpretation a lot, and I want to add to it. I think that through the ages, exactly what you said has gone on, in that the powers that be have used the mythology to continue to perpetuate their false narrative of control, but yet they were still maintaining the historical mythological story within. And this is like whisper down the lane and goes through the ages. But if you get back to the very beginning, what you find is that, and you call it astrotheology, that all of the god and god archetypes are planets, and it all originates in astrological ideas. And now what we're finding through the megalithic structures and all of the science that has happened recently is that they have, in fact, encoded so much intricate mathematics and astronomical information encoded into these megalithic structures that they were far more advanced than we can ever begin to imagine. Now, let's take it to a different level. The king's lists and the Sumerian lists, I believe those are real people that go back hundreds of thousands of years, real gods and real people. And there is ancient, unimaginable information that we can't even fathom. And this is why, Rex, these cosmic catastrophes are so decimating. There's nothing left. And more importantly, if the electric universe is true and we have been here for an infinite period of time, and just like you say, that our biological forms come from our star system exclusively, that's what the periodic table is. It's basically the elements that our star creates. We know that the solar wind creates these elements, all of them. So our star is making us. And if this has been happening for billions of years, and humanity is a few thousands, tens of thousands, come on. There is no way to fathom the levels that we have gotten to in the past or the dimensions that we're capable of attaining. All of the stories we know about us being stuck in a three-dimensional hell because of the satanic war, that might be true because we don't even know what that means. We don't know what other dimensions are. We're just simple biological units. Our consciousness, I believe, is eternal. And so it's so esoteric and etheric, and there's so many things coming together, archaeology, astronomy, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. And we need to just slowly take it in and sleep on it and then come back and think about it again. There should never be a conclusion made, because if you're fluid, I mean, the breakthroughs that we have on little chit chats are amazing. So there's a lot of things to delineate. There's a lot of overlapping things that are nonsense, and you have to start to just separate it all. It's an ongoing process. It's the best way I can put it.
Nice. And, speaking of, I was bringing up Marvel superheroes and stuff. Stan Lee, what an absolute legend that is a star in his own right. And he probably went back to his archetype star way out in the heavens, way out in space somewhere. I mean, just what a legend. And, think about all the movies and comics and characters and just imagination that he had, that he shared with others, with the superheroes that he created. And when you look at the ancient gods and deities and archetypes, how they overlay some of these just incredible superheroes that Stan Lee was a part of. And Thanos is a great example, I think. And the Thanos Rocket Man battles that took place, or not Rocket Man, Iron Man, I should say. Iron Man could very well be a representation of the Jack Parsons, JPL, the rocket scientist, magician. Well, what if, I mean, how did Stan Lee know that kind of stuff? And then you look at Wonder Woman. Hey, nice hat, by the way. I love your hat. I love your hat. That's amazing. And how did Stan Lee know about Inanna and Ishtar and Wonder Woman being connected to Inanna and Ishtar and all these Anunnaki gods and deities and stuff that he knew about? Just what an absolute legend. He was like, the gods were permeated through these archetypes. It's amazing how now we just have a different medium. Right now, we can go turn on a TV or turn on a big screen. We can go to the movie theater. We can pull up these different avenues to learn about the gods and deities and archetypes. Back in the day, at least for a while there, they had to draw everything on rocks and stuff. So let's close out with some happy words. I know you got a lot going on. So cool hat.
Here's what I find interesting. Here's what I find really interesting. There's a guy on YouTube who has uncovered the fact that Leonardo da Vinci's picture of the depiction of God on the Sistine Chapel, if you overlay a recent picture of the Orion Nebula on it, it is an exact depiction of something we've only been able to see in the last 8 years. And this type of manifesting this Akashic record, some people call it, all of the information that has ever been, always will be, infinitely is the universe. It's all connected electrically. And some people are psychic, and some people have abilities that they're not even aware of, like Stan Lee. And it comes right in. Think about it. Your consciousness is not your biology. Your body is like the television set. A television set does not work unless the signal comes in. So the signal coming in is coming in from the universe. And Stan Lee had the right brain to know all of the things that ever were without knowing he knew them. That is how the universe works. We're picking it up slowly, and it's amazing. And then I think we're coming up higher. It's the Yuga cycle. At some point, we're going to be able to levitate, make pyramids, and understand what happened and why we're here. It's been happening forever, Rex.
I certainly hope that we're going into a higher evolution and the opportunity to do these things that maybe the ancients were able to do and have these abilities. It'd be great. I'd love to just, like, in your dreams, do you ever just fly around in your dreams? And you remember them?
I flap. This is when I was a little kid. I just push off the ground, and if I flap my arms enough, I could push myself up forever and ever, and I would get high enough, and I slowly come down and just need to keep myself up with a couple flaps. This has been an ongoing dream since I was a child, that humans can fly. So I think that is something I've done. I was an excellent flyer.
That's awesome. When I have those lucid dreams, speaking of Iron Man, he's got that suit and he's got those like thrusters in his hands. I don't have to flap my hands or anything, but I'll just have to like push down. And as I push down, I'll go up 20 feet, 30 feet or something like that. Then I'll have to kind of do it again.
It's a push down, not like a flap. It's like a push.
Yeah.
And each push gets you more. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But if you don't do it, you're like, oh man, I got to make sure I go far enough this time or else I won't make it to that level. Oh man, I almost made it. I got to do it again.
It's the same dream because we're tapping the same information. It's the same information. It's the record of everything that ever was. Some people are gifted, some aren't. Some people meditate and they get different information. But I think that as a whole, from what I've learned from the Yuga cycles, we can only be as high as our ascendant nature is in the cosmogenic time. It's another 4,800 years and before we all be become psychic and language falls away. A lot of people don't understand why 12,900 years ago and the megalithic people before that, there's no language. They were all idiots, hunter-gatherers. No, not at all. They didn't form any trash. They were complete permaculturalists, and they didn't need language because they were psychic. It was the perfect type of scenario. Our thinking is pathetic. Anthropogenic thinking and man's ego is disgusting. It degrades us when we can have the audacity to believe that we understand anything is the number one fault of all humans. The most important thing I know, Rex, is I don't know anything. And every single day I have an opportunity to learn millions of new things. If I stop, I die. And I think the whole purpose here is to continue to move forward. If you're not moving forward, where are you going?
Well, if you're not moving forward, you're either going backwards or sideways, or you're doing something. But if you're sitting still, that's when things go stagnant and they start to stink. And, you know, it's always a great conversation with you, Diamond. I really appreciate you coming on the program. Ladies and gentlemen, check out the Oppenheimer Project, the Oppenheimer Ranch Project. And this guy actually lived in a tent at 15,000 feet elevation and got 80 feet of snow in the wintertime. And I'm exaggerating just a little bit. But no, I mean, he was about what, 11,000 feet that year? Like your ranch, you're up there about 10 or 10.5 or something, or what was it? 9,500. Which is it? Where are we at? You're on mute.
Oh, it's 9,000, Rex. You were there.
Yeah, I felt like it was like, it was amazing, dude.
Well,
and did you tell people? Hold on. This is incredible, folks. So he took the cabin. Can I tell him this story?
Yeah.
Oh, this is incredible, dude. This is incredible. So he took a part of the cabin of the Oppenheimer cabin on Oppenheimer Ranch, and talk about being efficient. And the thing's falling down. It's falling apart. He took just a little piece of it and created like the perfect outhouse that's connected on these ancient ley lines where you can see the different seasons and you can see the equinox, and you can see like, it's like, okay, here's the vortex where I'm putting the outhouse. And if you haven't heard of Oppenheimer, folks, the Oppenheimer brothers were the ones that helped develop the atomic bomb. They were brilliant. I don't think they knew what they were doing at the time until they're like, oh, you're turning this into a weapon. Okay. But anyway, I don't want to even get into that now, but it's just fascinating the connections and stuff that you were able to get a part of that land. And now you think, hey, maybe the ancestors before them, hundreds of years ago, were using that same piece of land, and they had the rocks lined up so they could see the different constellation. Was it the constellations or the different seasons? The different seasons.
There's stone circles up there, multiple circles that are archaeoastronomical. They line up with the equinoxes, as well as the solstices, and they also line up with lunar cycles, and they traverse the great cycle, which is 18.5 years. I didn't notice that until after I had lined up the outhouse perfectly to catch the sun at the lowest arc in the sky. So I wanted to be able to go out and sit in the outhouse, and it was warm once the sun came up every morning. So I was just using practical knowledge. And by doing that, when I looked out into the flat area in front of me, I noticed the stone circle. Where else would it be? Right in that same position, lining up with the Blackhead Peak and Square Top. These are huge geographical features. And then so I happened to be out there on the vernal equinox at sunrise, and sure enough, the sun came up through the notch right on the horizon of the mountain, and it lined perfectly up with the rocks. And my mind was blown, because then I waited till June 21st to confirm the other alignments. And what else are ancient Indians going to do except, what's the most important thing you need? You need a calendar. And the first thing I did when we got to that site was I found archaeological evidence of Ice Age cultures. Clovis. I found a Clovis point there, and that sealed the deal. We bought the land. So, and it's very typical that ancient people or the first settlers tend to be building their huts and stuff right on top of other people. Everything gets reused. It's the best spot. It's the best view. It's the best hunting. It's the best water. In this case, in the spring, it has these high mountain ponds and the spring peeper frogs. It's literally like you're on a different planet. It is mesmerizing by Oppenheimer's cabin there in March. Oh man, that's exactly why they built the cabin there. It doesn't sound, it's deafening. It's so amazing.
Do you hear that? What is that? That's that story you told me. Well, it's an inside joke, folks. All right, we're gonna let Diamond go here. He's super busy. He's got another podcast he's probably gonna do here in about 15 minutes. Excellent show, excellent information, and folks, definitely, remember Christmas is right around the corner. Go to historicsilvercoins.com, get a $5 discount with the code Leak Project. Pick yourself up a piece of history. Pick yourself up a Morgan silver dollar. And these things are either lightly circulated, uncirculated. They're amazing. Oh, yeah. Hey, check this out. Look what Diamond's doing. Diamond is showing off his 5G shielding liner that was actually sewn into the limited edition handmade Leak Project cap. These are made in London. They're limited. They're amazing. And they actually literally block 5 gigahertz. I'm sorry, 5G up to 30 gigahertz. They block up to 30 gigahertz. And that's even got a signature on it. Will you look at that? That's amazing. There's a few of them left. Not many. There's a few of them left. I've actually got the last shipment of the MK2s coming in, hopefully within the next week from London. And then after that, they're gone. The MK2s are done. That's it. Only 88 total ever made, handmade, and they look amazing. See, his has actually got the yin yang liner on that. We just look at it. He could turn off the lights and he could see anywhere he's going because the bill lights up and it's like reflects and it's just, you could follow the bill anywhere in the world. You don't even need to worry about the sun. Be the change you want to see. That was a shameless plug. Leakproject.com/shop. Shameless, but also blocking 5G. Be the change you want to see. Nano.